Welcome to the Operators Association podcast. This is our 10th episode. I'm your host, John Allen. I'm a former Navy SEAL, and I co-founded the Operators Association Mentorship Group, which now has over, almost 400 members, 70 of which are on our chat room with the 60 plus operators that are on there to help answer questions and lend insight into the world of special operations. So last week we did the first installment of what I'm now calling the Buds Journey. Basically, I'm going to take you through the entire life cycle of the selection program, Basic Underwater Demolition / SEAL School. It's the 6-month long selection course where the graduates move on to qualification training and then ultimately become Navy SEALs. The attrition rate is north of 85% during the 6-month Buds course. And, honestly, despite or even though there is almost an unlimited amount of information online about Buds, just between books, movies, blogs, Instagram pages, mentorship groups, there still is this missing component of nuance. Without someone to be able to really get into detail to explain the context around a lot of this information, unless you have firsthand experience of being around SEALs or being around a selection program, some of it may not it isn't like it's confusing. It's more like without context, without like detailed nuance, a lot of the stuff online is just you can't possibly appreciate it. Here's an example, and this has nothing to do with Buds, but when I was considering going into the teams, I spoke with a very senior Navy SEAL, spent time over at development group, by all accounts was just this rock solid team guy. And I asked him why he got out of the military in the first place. And this was actually the same person who explained to me this notion that people don't just randomly go and become SEALs. They have this calling, this desire that's so intense to go try out to be a SEAL that they actually, once they have this calling, they can't do anything else. And I believed I had that. He's the same guy that told me that. But what he told me about when he got out was he said his luck had run out. And I think that my interpretation of that at the time was pretty clean. It was like, okay, he must mean that the job is so dangerous, that at some point you just feel like you've dodged enough bullets, and if you stick around any longer, you're going to get killed. And I think that without context, if you just look at what that statement means, that, this guy got out because, quote, his luck ran out. And he kind of said it jokingly, but it was also serious. Without context, it just sounds like what I told you, that his dangerous job and that's that. But what now I understand is that really luck is not just applicable to combat, but training. We have more SEALs that die in training than we do in combat. That's not true, I think, over the course of the history of the SEAL teams, but it's certainly true of late. And so, my mind when he told me that was, combat is so intense. At some point, combat deployments are too much and you get out while you're still alive. But really the whole job is dangerous. And to be honest, part of it too is like, your marriage or your relationship might be on the rocks. And at some point you realize that you've just been lucky enough that your wife hasn't left you yet. And so you're like, I'm going to cash out while I'm still married. So the point of what he was getting at was not just to say that combat alone can be so intense that at some point you just, pull chocks and get out. Now I understand that same statement, the whole, your luck runs out. And that's why a lot of people get out of the teams early. It applies to the whole life cycle of being in the teams, everything from relationships to training to combat as well. So these are not complicated concepts. It's more that I want this podcast and Operators Association in general to be the context and nuance that's really necessary to have a full understanding of what not only the SEAL teams are like, but other special operations units. And so I'm going to stop there because that tangent went longer than I expected it to. But today's episode is a continuation of last week's episode. The first episode was part one of the Bud's journey. I'm not sure how many parts this is going to have. It's going to depend on how long-winded I go. But I'm sure for the people that gave me some feedback, I think long-winded and a little bit tangential is actually what you're looking for. You want the details, you want the nuance, so I'm going to give it to you. But today's episode is going to pick up where the last one left off. So if you haven't had a chance, do go back and listen to the first episode. It covers from the tail end of Bud's prep in Chicago. It covers the gap between leaving Chicago and going to San Diego to start Buds, but really you don't start Buds right away. And I explained this in the previous episode, you get to San Diego and you go through this kind of admin period followed by INDOC, which is actually now called BO, or Basic Orientation. It was called that when I was there too, but it had just changed, which is, I believe, 3 weeks long. And I talked about some of the test gates in there and how to be successful from a high level. And then I got all the way up to, I believe, the very first day of first phase. And so today's episode, if I can swing it, kind of depends on how much time I have to do this, which I think I have about an hour here. I'd like to get through the first few weeks of first phase and Hell Week, because there's a very important distinction. And this is the whole, I talked just a minute ago about the importance of context and nuance and really having someone explain to you the mindset and all the little details that make up, this whole process. When I get to Hell Week and I start talking about Hell Week, do your best to put yourself in the mind of, like, as I'm telling this, let me say this more clearly. As I talk through today's episode, which is going to be first phase and Hell Week, put yourself in my shoes as I'm detailing my own experience. Put yourself in my shoes. Don't feel bad about it. Just pretend that you are me. And as I'm telling you these experiences that I've had and I give you these details, put yourself in my shoes as much as you can. Because when you get to Hell Week, you are just not the same person you were in terms of expectations, in terms of understanding. You're not the same person you were when you started first phase, which is only a few weeks earlier. Things change because you put in so much blood, sweat, and tears just to get to Hell Week that you just have a different mindset about Hell Week than you do at the beginning of first phase. And certainly you have a far different opinion of Hell Week and first phase before you've even gone to the Navy. So just your own understandings evolve as you progress through this course. So however you feel about this seemingly insurmountable mountain that you need to climb, which is Buds, it's really, there are phases within phases. And I just want you to be thinking about, if you were in my shoes as I give you this rundown of first phase, when I start telling you about the way you feel, and now I'm talking about myself, the way you feel when you get to Hell Week, I'm telling you it's going to be very different from what you think it is now. So with that in mind, let's get started. Okay, so when you begin first phase, when you've made it out of INDOC, you've been picked up for the first phase class, you're in phase. And I mentioned this before. Anybody that is in a phase, whether it's first, second, or third, those people are referred to as being, quote, in phase. When you are rolled, and you are, if you are rolled, I should say, if and when you are rolled, you are no longer in phase because you're in between classes. You're waiting for the next class. So when you reference being in phase, that means people that are literally in the course. They are part of first, second, or third phase. When you are in phase for the first time, which is obviously first phase, the intimidation factor is enormous, and frankly, it's supposed to be. And I mentioned in the last episode that INDOC, or I should say BO, basic orientation, it's intentionally scripted to be call it 75% of the intensity of first phase, which is, 100%, right? First phase is 100%. That's done so that when you get into phase for the first time, you are blown away at just how unbelievably over the top and intense it is, because bow is hard. It's not so hard that you should be worried about it, but it is hard. And when you get to phase for the first time, the shock and awe is very real. Even if you brace yourself for it, it's still real. So just understand that when you get into phase, it's really difficult up front to adjust to the kind of intensity of the course, which is being in phase. But that doesn't last very long. You develop this kind of very cynical, dark humor. Pretty much everybody does about buds if you've been in phase long enough, where you no longer are like scared of things or intimidated by things. You're more like resentful that you have to do it as part of the course, which is actually a better way to. It's almost like a coping mechanism, that everything sucks so bad in buds that developing a dark sense of humor about it, and not dreading and fearing things, but rather just being resentful and making jokes at how stupid buds is, that kind of stuff. That's what definitely does start to happen. But anyways, I'll just start at day one again for first phase and touch on it briefly. So, day one, you have your schedule given to the class OIC and class LPO the previous, Friday or over the weekend. And so your class has your class up party, which is pretty low key, at least for us it was. We just all got together on the beach, and down near, Hotel Del, the big, beautiful hotel that you're going to know really well. That's right near the Buds compound. Have your class up party, you spend the weekend, if you haven't already done this, getting your helmet prepped, which involves like meticulously placing the letters that go on your helmet, which are these plastic, like little sticky letters, and polying your helmet. I don't know. I honestly don't know how they do it anymore, but there's this sheen that you put on your helmet. There's a whole process that you'll be taught. But anyways, you prep all your gear, and then first phase starts. And for us, it didn't start at the time that was listed on the agenda. It was like, the class is supposed to start at like 4 with a PIBI, which is the personnel / barracks inspection. It really started at like 3:30, and it was chaos, and the instructors are in our barracks screaming and yelling, and it was just chaos. But it's supposed to be that way. And, in relative short order, we had people quitting, and ringing the bell. And the first few times you hear the bell ringing, there's an element of, I guess, fear that it could be one of your friends. But really quickly, the sound of the bell is actually a very positive thing for the people in the class. Nobody wants their buds class to go down as, quote, an easy class. And really the only telltale sign, unless you were in a class or in a particular class, the only telltale sign to outsiders of how difficult a class was is how many people quit. And so you almost yearn for the bell to ring more within the first few days of phase starting, assuming you're someone that's kind of got your shit together and you're doing fairly well. But you start hearing the bell, and by like breakfast time on that first day, people are a little bit shell shocked, not because everything is so hard, but because all that work and training that you did, and you feel like, you read all these books, and you contacted mentors, and, you hopped on the Operators Association page, and, you diligently trained, and you did all this stuff for some of you years. And now it's actually started. All the buildup, all the hype, and holy shit, it's actually happening now. And it's only a few hours in, and people have already quit. The people around you have also spent years training for this. They've waited for this. They've thought about it. They've daydreamed about it. They've done all the things that you have. You're not going to meet people in your class that are showing up truly unprepared. That just doesn't happen. Everybody has put in all this time and energy, and there's something totally, what's the word for it? Just like it really throws you off balance when you realize that everybody around you has put in the same level of effort, give or take, as you have. Certainly there's differences in skill level and maturity and all that, but you really recognize how big of a deal it is when people start quitting, because everybody else had dreams too, and they wanted to be there, or so they believed, as much as you did. And by breakfast time on that first day, you've probably been up for like 2 or 3 hours, and people have quit. And I'm telling you, on the one hand, it's satisfying, that people are quitting and you're still there. But on the other, it's daunting that you start realizing that this class is, buds is no joke. And we're only a few hours into the first day. And even though I knew people were going to quit, it's a little bit shocking when it actually happens. So the overarching theme of first phase, in fact, I'm not even theme, because the theme is it's pain and suffering. That's first phase. That's early first phase is pain and suffering, and not just physical pain. It's like anguish. You're tired. You have all the stuff that you have to do, and you're dreading the next thing, and there's not really enough time to recover, both physically and mentally. You're treated really, really badly. You'll have a taste of that in boot camp. In fact, boot camp, you're almost treated worse because the instructors have chips on their shoulders, because a lot of them aren't special operators, but they know you're going to buds. They treat you like, who the F do you think you are, thinking you can come in and be better than me and go be a Navy SEAL. You're not going to make it and all that BS. But like in buds, it's a low point. Usually for people, the first few weeks it's a mixture. It's a low point, but it's also a high point too if you've made it a couple days. Just because, as I mentioned in one of my posts, every minute that you keep going, especially in first phase, it really does feel like an accomplishment. But the theme I wanted to talk to, yes, it's pain and suffering. That's really what selection is. But the theme of first phase, early first phase, is when you're there, it's something else. It's boats and logs. And if you aren't familiar, and I know that this group on Operators Association, by and large, is a group that's read in to, what buds is, what selection is at different courses. And you guys are pretty well educated, is what I mean to say. But for those of you that don't know, or maybe had read about boat PT and log PT, and actually, by the way, I was in this category, the one I'm about to tell you, the uneducated group. Maybe you wrote off the difficulty of boats and logs, because if you look it up, you see, some of the famous imagery of buds is obviously Hell Week, the kind of at night, wet and sandy, tired, miserable. And then you have people running with inflatable boats on their heads. And, even though, of course, it's heavy, there's an element of, okay, there's like 6 people carrying this boat. How hard can it be? Same is true for the telephone log PT. It looks intimidating on paper. You see an image of it, but you're kind of like, okay, I'm in good shape. Everybody with me is going to be in good shape. We're just going to be like, throwing a log over our heads. What's the big deal? I did not appreciate how fucking miserable boats and logs was going to be until I actually arrived at buds. And the way I was introduced to it, and I think that I mentioned in the last episode to be very careful with your affiliation with white shirt rollbacks when you show up to the compound. When you show up to San Diego and you meet your new class, you're going to have all these people that have enrolled from the previous class, or even classes before that. They've gotten enrolled and they're waiting to class up, but they haven't finished Hell Week yet. So you get all these people who are joining this class that are white shirts, and I tell you to be weary of their advice, because a lot of them aren't going to make it. Some of them will, but it's the lowest percentage of all the people that go through buds. And this is not backed by some hard stat that I can reference, but just having been there, I can speak to this. The demographic that is the least likely to succeed are white shirt rollbacks, because they just don't do well. So you need to be weary of the advice and the guidance they give. But I'm going to go against that and say that I learned about boats and logs from a white shirt rollback who did ultimately become a SEAL and went over to development group, which is the tier 1 unit. And he's actually still in. But he told me I got to Buds, I ended up connecting with him. He was like, I think one of the first questions I asked, and you'll probably ask this of the white shirts that you meet, the rollbacks, you'll say, hey, so tell me about Buds. Like, what was it like? Because even though they might have only been in for a little while, they still were in Buds and you weren't. And this guy had been to Hell Week, and got medically rolled in Hell Week and had to start Buds all over again, which is just absolutely brutal. But this guy's a beast. And he laughed. He's like, easy, boats and logs. And I remember being like, what do you mean? Like, I know that we do, log PT and we do, we run around boats, but like, isn't surf torture or like grinder PT or something like that worse? And he's like, no. And it's not even close. Like, boats and logs are the worst part. And so the reason, and I certainly discovered this to be true. Well, actually, let me say this. It's difficult to describe how chaotic it is under a boat. And that terminology, that phrase, under a boat, is something that people reference in Buds. So that, like a telltale of how good someone is during the pipeline, like when you're in third phase, people say stuff like this. Dude, he was a beast under a boat. He was a beast under the log. He was a bitch under the boat. I don't know how he's still here. He never took the 2 spot. And that's on the boat. There's 6 spots. There's 2 at the front, 2 in the middle, 2 in the back. And it's 3 on each side of the boat. The 2 spot is the middle spot on either side. There's two spots per boat. And you carry the most weight, just because of the way the boat's shaped, and it's miserable. And everybody rotates through. Say on a log, you rotate a little bit, less frequently, but the ends of the log are not as bad as the middle of the log. Another term is boat ducking. You can't necessarily tell, but there are people that'll be running and they'll have their head under the boat, but they'll be kind of slouching so they're not carrying all the weight. There's a whole culture associated with boats and logs. And if there was one thing that really separates the good people from the not so good people, and what I mean by that is specifically how good of a SEAL they're ultimately going to make, not how good of a person they are, because everyone is a good person for the most part who goes to Buds. This is really about whether they'll be a good SEAL. If you perform well during boats and logs, everybody recognizes it, because that is in many ways the most painful and most miserable put out evolution that you do in Buds. And it's really the focus of the first few weeks of Buds, of phase, being in phase, in Hell Week. So boats and logs, they're 2 separate evolutions. And you can pretty much guarantee that virtually every day of first phase through Hell Week, you will be doing either boats or logs or both. I don't remember a day in those first 3 weeks where we did not do boats and logs. So the first 3 weeks of phase are just really unbelievably brutal. But they're brutal because of boats and logs. And I was mentioning before the chaos, that it's hard to articulate or really convey the chaos under a boat or under a log. And so I'm going to give you a snapshot of the human condition under enormous amounts of stress. There is a good chance that, and forgive me if you're someone that has had some extremely stressful experience in your life that you've had to endure. Forgive me, because I'm not trying to act like only people that have been through Buds have experienced this. I know that's not true. I know that's not true, but just in virtue of being a relatively young audience, which I'm assuming most of you are between the ages of maybe 15 and 25, there's a good chance you have not endured true physical agony, which really, it's not even physical agony. It transcends physical agony and becomes mental torture. I don't know if you've gone through something like that. So I will give you a snapshot of what happens when human beings are placed under enormous physical and mental pressure, which is effectively what happens at BUD/S. When you are under a boat in BUD/S, let's say I'm only talking about the first 3 weeks, not even Hell Week, which Hell Week is a whole other story, which we will get to today, hopefully. You're never going to do something that's low key under a boat. I mean, everywhere you go in those first 3 weeks, you are running, one, and most of the time you're running with a boat on your head. So imagine if you went out for a run right now. You paused this podcast and you said, I'm going to go do a quick run. I'm going to go run for a few miles. And you just do it with running shoes, and, it's just you. You go out, you do a run, you feel great, you come back. Well, a couple things are going to happen. You're going to stop the run, and you're going to be walking, standing, or sitting, stretching, whatever, but you're going to be stopped. Your exercise stops, and you shift to recovery, which is, even if your recovery is not deliberate, it's just not running anymore, you're recovering. You're going to go get something to eat, or, whatever. You're going to go sleep, but you're going to do some form of recovery. Okay? Now imagine you're going to go run with a backpack with weight in it. It almost doesn't even matter how much weight is in there. Let's just assume it's not extreme. We're not talking about a 400-pound backpack. We're talking about 30 pounds in a rucksack. You go out, you go for your run, same distance, a little bit slower, but you have weight in your back. Definitely you're putting out, but you're thinking about the end, which is, I'm going to get, when I finish this loop, let's call it a 5-mile loop, and the loop ends at your house, which is also the start point. You get back to your house. The whole run, you're thinking about, this is going to come to an end when I get to my house. I'm going to put out and be a badass. I'm going to run with this weight on my back. I'm going to feel really good about it. I'm going to get back to my house. I'm going to ditch this fucking ruck, and I'm going to go in. I'm going to chill for a second, get a bite to eat, take a shower, sleep. Again, recovery and definitive ending to your run. Okay, now imagine you go for a run, except instead of it being weight in a rucksack, you're going to wear a helmet that, forget it being top heavy, okay? Imagine if you had 30 pounds on the top of your head, okay? Again, it's hard to picture this. It's kind of like a rucksack, but instead of the weight being on your shoulders and kind of hopefully dispersed well enough that you pulled it high, tight in your back, that it's on your shoulders and, your lumbar area, the lumbar support area of your back. I don't even know if that's a term. Hopefully it's done well, and it's it is what it is. When you have weight on your head, which is not something human beings do normally, unless you're in Africa or something where they carry water jugs on their head, the weight is pushed into your neck and spine. That's it. And it's so easy, if you tilt your head to one side or the other, to pull a muscle or to tweak your neck. And now I want you to imagine that weight jostles. It's not tied down tight to your head. It's imagine a jug of water. Okay? You have a 30-pound jug of water on the top of your head, and it sloshes around, and it goes up and it goes down, and if you bend down low, it comes with you. It presses on your neck and your spine, and now you're going to go for a run. And now you're going to be careful when you run, because you don't want to tweak your neck. You don't want to hurt your back, you don't want to hurt your neck, and you're going to run with this jug of water on your head, which is probably not the best analogy because there's way more motion in that than a boat, but bear with me. You do your 5-mile loop, and on this loop, the whole time you're thinking not about how miserable it is, because it's going to be miserable for you. You're mostly just making sure you don't get hurt, because you're like, man, I know this is a bad idea running with weight on the top of my head. I could very easily hurt my neck, my spine. This is a bad idea, but I'm going to gut it out and do it. and you're like, just get to the end of this 5-mile loop, okay? And maybe you even shorten the loop to around the block. You're like, I'm really not going to hurt myself. And you're going to run around the block with this jug of water on your head. And the whole time you're thinking, don't get hurt, get to the end, right? So you do your run, you get back to your house, and you have your brother, your sister come over and carefully take the water off of your head because you don't want to hurt yourself. And then you go in the house and you recover, okay? In all three of those examples, there's no denying that it mattered that there was a definitive end to your run and that you got to recover, right? You're going to do this run, and on the run, when it's really miserable, you have two things in your favor. You're thinking, it's going to end because I'm going to end it when I get to the finish line, and I'm going to recover. Okay, now let's think about buds. The finish line is unclear, but they tell you what the finish line is, specifically so it screws with your mind. You'll be told, from time to time, you'll be told, let's just use the same analogy I've been using, this run around the block. Imagine I'm your buds instructor, and let's just say, for example, that buds is somehow happening at your house, and it's going to be the same loop you've been on, and I'm going to tell you what to do, and you're going to do it. Okay, so now you're going to put that same jug of water on your head, and now you have to sprint. You're going to sprint, and not around the block. You're going to sprint for 5 miles. And I'm going to tell you that it's 5 miles. And I'm going to be running next to you with a bullhorn screaming at you that you should just quit because you're not strong enough. You're never going to make it. Like, you should just quit now. And obviously, I know it's not physically possible for you to sprint for 5 miles. But I'm going to keep telling you that that's what you're supposed to do. You need to be sprinting. There is no jogging. There is no walking. I'm going to start telling you, hey, if you slow down, I'm just going to drop you. Like, the end. And so now you have someone screaming at you. And now you stop worrying about hurting yourself because that's out the window. You know that at this point it's game on, and there's nothing you can do except hope to just suffer through this thing that's happening to you. And now you're like, I need to just find a way to keep moving forward. Whether or not I hurt myself, I'll deal with that later. Okay? So the mindset goes from protecting your body and just get to that finish line and then recover to, holy shit, this is fucking horrible. Someone's screaming at me. I hope this ends. I hope I make it to whenever this ends. Because guess what? Once we hit that 5-mile mark, I'm just not going to say anything and we're going to keep running. And if you even suggest, why haven't we stopped? I'm just going to make it worse, right? Or suddenly we stop early and I make you do something else altogether. Hey, just kidding. I want you to do 500 push-ups. The point I'm trying to make here is that the human mind does really well when things are structured. When you go out today, or just think of the last time you trained, like specifically if you're going to buds. Whatever training regimen you did, maybe with the exception of the people that maybe took some of my advice, which was the next time you're out on a run, you can't structure this because the whole point is this has to be random. If you're feeling good and you're supposed to do, let's say, a 5-mile run, run another mile. Like when you don't have to, go do another mile. That's the closest feeling you can get to what happens in buds, which is just things just continue longer than expected and they're random. But putting that aside, when you are training, you really can't replicate what it feels like to not have a finish line and not be able to recover. When you're training for buds, people are really concerned about getting hurt and preventing injury. And that's one element of what people care about. And the other is, am I strong or fit or fast enough? Those are really the two central pieces of training concerns that people have. But they're both really not applicable when it comes down to what buds actually demands of you. Well, they're totally applicable because you don't want to get hurt and you do want to be in the best shape you can be in, no doubt. But buds isn't seeing how healthy or how fit or strong you are. Or I should say specifically boats and logs. Doesn't give a shit if you're the best at boats and logs. I mean, there are ways to excel. Like I mentioned, you stand out if you're someone that's really good at boats and logs. But it's really about, can you handle this? Can you do this for a period of time that's unclear at a pain threshold that's way higher than you've ever experienced? And can you do it alongside other people that are struggling just as mightily as you are, some of which aren't handling it very well? Okay. So you're under a boat. The boat, I think, is 180 pounds with nothing in it. And then if you add in sand and water, it's probably north of 200 pounds. And you have 6 people under the boat, and you're running as fast as you can for these evolutions, and the boat is bouncing on your head and it's jacking up your neck, and there are people next to you and around you that are ducking boat, and you see it and you're suffering, and they're trying to duck out of it, and you feel the additional weight on your head. I mean, there are people under the boat that are punching each other because they think other people are ducking boat, right? It's just an experience that I realized that analogy was long, and I don't even know if it even came close to hitting on what I wanted to describe, which is training is training, meaning training for buds is training. I mean, there's training wheels on your training, and frankly, they should stay on because you really do run the risk of hurting yourself if you tried to emulate or replicate buds in training. But, you're going to go out and put out, but there's going to be a finish line that you've determined, and there's going to be a recovery period. In buds, you lose both those things, and the workouts that you do, boats and logs specifically, are designed to be borderline physically not possible. So it isn't like you're just going to go do some PT and it's just going to keep going on. You're going to be asked to sprint on sand with 6 other people that are tripping on each other's feet with a boat that weighs 200 pounds. And sometimes you're all going to fall and the boat's going to come crashing down on you. People break bones under that thing. You're going to tweak your neck, but they're not going to give a shit about your neck. It's either keep going or leave the class. You're going to be surrounded by people that are panicking when it gets really, 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 really hard under the boat. And they're going to duck boat. And they're going to complain, oh my God, the belly aching that goes on under the boat, which people get it. And I'm sure I was guilty of being unbelievably vocal and complaining, and we're sprinting with this fucking boat on our head. But man, it really comes down to can you suffer, massively suffer, without a finish line and without recovery? And what I mean by recovery is you're going to finish, let's say boats. I keep talking about boats. I'll get into logs too. Boats takes 3 hours a day. And it's built into the whole day, because pretty much everywhere you go, you got to bring these stupid boats with you with your boat crew. You got to run all around with your boat everywhere. And so boats are really just a part of the day, but you're spending hours and hours a day sprinting around with this fucking boat on your head. It's horrible. And you're not thinking, oh boy, it's just going to end and it's going to be great when it comes to an end, because it's buds is a progression. It's going to ratchet up all the way through the first 3 weeks, and you're going to be completely obliterated by the end of it. And then you're like, man, I got to do hell week. And then logs. So I'm going to segue right here, because the hardest physical evolution in buds, typically people will either say it was boats or it was logs. Or it was, something else there are people that really struggle with a 5-minute tread in second phase. Certainly there are people that struggle with Hell Week. I mean, everyone struggles with Hell Week, but some more than others because they were sick or something. For me, the hardest part of buds physically, which by extension was the hardest part, well, not the hardest part mentally, but it was very difficult mentally. But the thing that pushed me to my limit was chest carrying logs. Let me break that down for you. Log PT is very simple, and frankly, boat PT is too. You move the boat around. You push the boat up over your head. You lay down, and everyone's doing push-ups with it. You're doing lunges with it. Same goes for logs. You have your boat crew of 6 of you, and you have a log, and you have an instructor with a bullhorn telling you what to do, up, down, and you learn the commands. You throw it up, and then you shift it to your other arm, and you throw it back up, and you shift it down to your other side. You do lunges, you do sit-ups, you roll the log into the surf and kick it out with your feet. There's all these things you do. But there's one particularly sinister and just soul-crushingly difficult thing that they make you do. And it isn't like it's one time they make you do it. It's part of the regiment of logs. And it's after you've gotten totally smoked. like you've been throwing the log up over your head and your boat crew's getting screwed up and you're all tired. And this is only one of the various things you do that day. I mean, you might have a 4-mile time run that day. You might do an O course too. You're doing like a beat down, you got grinder PT. Oh, and also you're doing logs. And it's, week 2, day 3, and you've just been getting crushed every day and you get no sleep. Chest carrying is when they literally make your boat crew face the same direction and they put the log on the inside of your forearms and you hold it at your chest. You kind of loop your hands up and over. You're kind of like almost carrying it like a baby in front of you. And think about the mechanics of 7 people facing all the same direction, holding a log, and just trying to walk in a straight line. I mean, basically everyone needs to be walking at the exact same time. It's not possible to even delay a little bit because literally like each person has to move in tandem to go anywhere. And you're on soft sand. You do the logs in the soft sand right near the O course. And the chest carry, sometimes it's long, sometimes it's short, sometimes it's just one of the random things you do in the middle of a bunch of exercises. But what they would make us do is they would make us do chest carry and then just run. And honestly, running is not what we were able to do. It was a fast walk, but they would take their vehicles and they just drive down the beach. And you had to walk with this fucking log. And all of you, all 6 of you, there's absolutely no way without dropping from the log to stop feeling pain. There's not a recovery at all. You can't slow down because there's a horde of instructors that are just basically looking for people that are giving in, giving up, doing anything, and you will get immediately singled out. There's literally like a ton of instructors all over you with their bullhorns, literally looking for people that are really struggling. And you have to I remember we walked to, what's it called? The mud pits or what? I forget what it's called now. It's where you do So Solly Day in Hell Week. It's like, I don't know, maybe I'm misremembering, but maybe a mile down the Strand or half a mile. And we would just walk on the soft sand where you do a lot of rucking, doing a chest carry. And like you are completely, I was, so not you, maybe some people were like, oh, that wasn't too bad. For me, it was. I was like 100% of my energy is being used right now and it's not enough. And it became bordering on, I don't know how my legs are still moving. I don't know how I'm still able to at least attempt to hold my share of the weight. I don't know how this is even happening. I've actually gone so far. I've pushed so hard physically. Like I don't actually know how I'm still able to keep moving forward. And it's something I had never experienced in training or really anything I had done to that point. Chest carrying for me was like the single most physically difficult thing I've ever done. And we would like run up berms. Like again, everyone's facing like up the berm and you're carrying this huge ass log. So, I hope I've drilled home that, boats and logs, are really, those are the hardest physical things you're probably going to be asked to do, at Buds. I mean, Hell Week is kind of an evolution in and of itself, but in terms of day-to-day stuff, I mean, the O course isn't going to change. You get used to doing the O course. 2-mile swims, those aren't going to change. You get used to doing them. Sometimes the weather's bad. Sometimes the water's choppy, but you grow to expect a certain type of, training. You grow used to what it feels like to do the 2-mile ocean swim. Same goes for the 4-mile runs. I mean, in fact, the runs, people typically get stronger on. Even if your body is breaking down, you just feel stronger. But the boats and logs portion is just like, that's a test of your soul. It really is. But what I wanted to do, and that was the theme, I guess, of first phase. I'm going to get into some details here. So the way first phase works is you are given a schedule, or I should say your class leadership, which is your officer in charge, or OIC, and your LPO, your leading petty officer. So that's your senior officer and senior enlisted, who are in charge of the class. They are given the schedule for the following day. And the day will start at, relatively early in the morning, and it will go till late at night. And you'll know in advance if you have a night evolution, because in first phase, You do night rock portage. You do like a night, I forget what it's called, like maybe water confidence, which is pretty much just like surf torture. You do like boat PT at night. There's a bunch of stuff that is like literally scheduled that you got to do at night. But you're given your schedule, and to be honest, you do adhere to the schedule. The deviations occur really in the morning. Start times sometimes change. And by the way, your buds cadre is going to change your schedule on purpose. Like they'll give you one schedule and they know full well they're just going to roll with a different schedule, and they're going to give you the morning to be told that it's completely changed. And the reason that matters is like, let's say you have a barracks inspection, a personnel/barracks inspection that's scheduled for Wednesday, right? And I'm making this up. And everybody knows, like on Tuesday, or I should say, the week before, like that, the week before a week starts, I believe your OIC and LPO are given kind of the rundown of what the week's going to look like. And so they know, like, hey, we're going to have a PI/BI this week. And you may be anticipating it on a Wednesday, but they'll be like, yeah, just kidding. On Tuesday morning, they'll tell your OIC and LPO in the morning, hey, we're going to do that PI/BI today. And so you have all these people that haven't finished preparing because they were banking on Tuesday night to finish polishing their boots or whatever it is. And your instructors know that. And pretty much people fail inspections and stuff. So the changes to schedule are real. And it's not uncommon to have your whole day kind of screwed up. But the way it works is you get your schedule. And let's just start with day one of first phase is done. Okay. And I'm going to talk from there kind of in specifics about how this works. So day one finishes, and your class and your OIC and LPO, you all run back to the first phase barracks. And even though the day is over, you are in sight of SEALs and instructors. And so you kind of run back towards the pit area, which is behind the first phase barracks, and you can't really be out of sight. So there's this kind of section that you'll see as you're looking at the barracks. It's on the right side. That's kind of near the bathrooms, where you all kind of will muster up, and your OIC and LPO will probably have a few words to say to the class. At this point, probably between maybe, I'm making this up, maybe 10, 15 people have quit. People will start kind of to assess the damage and kind of figure out who quit. Like, there's a little bit of an opportunity to talk amongst yourselves. But you get a rundown of what's going to happen the next day. Because at the end of the training day, there are a bunch of things called collaterals that the whole class has to do. You each are assigned a collateral. And then as people quit, people that are still in the class will backfill those different collaterals. They include things like cleaning the vehicles that the instructors use, which, by the way, they spend all day dipping, drinking energy drinks, and kind of like blazing around on the beach and getting sand everywhere. And there's just crap all over these vehicles every day. And every day the first phase class, or actually all classes do this, but your class will have to go, like 2 or 3 of you will take all of the vehicles, like 3 or 4 of them, drive them over to the transportation area and fill them up with gas and clean them, like hose them, brush them off, vacuum out the inside, make it beautiful, and then go park them at the on the grinder where the instructors use them. There's others like the youngest people in the class, the junior man, which is like everybody knows who the junior man is. It's the youngest person in the class. The bottom two in terms of age have to go clean the brass bell that people ring when they quit. They have to go get that and literally polish it every single night. There's comics. People have to write a comic every day for the Buds cadre in the morning. Like when the Buds cadre arrives, there's a comic that needs to be written, and it needs to be like about them, kind of like a roast. And you'll learn, that's a whole other thing about what's appropriate and what's not. But they want to be made fun of because it's funny to them. There's the coffee people, the people that literally go over and prep the coffee machine in the first phase office so that when the instructors walk in, it's timed and the coffee is made. There's the grinder crew, which is like 10 people that take brooms and push all the sand off of the the grinder, which is where those white duck feet are painted right in the middle of the buds compound where you do PT. Geez, there's a bunch of them. I'm trying to think what else there is. There's probably like the bathroom group that cleans the bathroom, and there's the barracks group, and then there's just all sorts of these kind of chores that need to get done every single day. But the OIC and the LPO, instead of doing collaterals, they go and talk to the cadre, and the cadre is your staff, the instructors. They'll go over and talk to them. I've never been a part of any of these meetings. I have no idea what happens at these meetings, but I've been told, or I've deduced, from being in Buds, that during this little meeting between the OIC and LPO and the Buds cadre, sometimes they get beat down just because, or sometimes they get a legitimate debrief on how the day went, what they can do to improve, what people are struggling, who's doing really well. But in addition to whatever ends up happening in terms of debriefing or punishment between just the LPO, OIC, and the staff, and this is behind closed doors, it's out of the sight of our class, of the class, they are given the rundown of how the next day is going to go. And it'll be like, okay, we're going to have a pre-breakfast run on the beach. You're going to meet instructor so-and-so down on the beach at this time, call it 5. Make sure you're there with your canteens and, your not running shoes, definitely not running shoes. They give you like details, like be here with this equipment at this time. And then it's like, then we're going to have chow. And then after that, we're going to do, boats and logs. And then we're going to do a 4-mile timed run. And then we're going to have lunch. And then we're going to do rock portage daytime. And then we're going to have our dinner. We're going to do MREs instead of going to the chow hall, because the nighttime we have night rock portage. And I'm making this schedule up, but the point is they are literally given, like, this is what's happening tomorrow. And so what they do is they take their notes and they figure out what was good, what was bad, and whatever other random things they're told to do. Sometimes they're told, hey, you need to go back and tell the entire class that, they need to write this essay, because one person was late to muster. Everybody needs to write an essay to be handed in tomorrow morning. That's a full page talking about the importance of punctuality, stuff like that. And they come back, and after everyone finishes their collaterals, which end at various times, and typically if your collateral just takes a couple minutes, here's a pro tip. You should go find another collateral that's taking a long time. Like, I know the grinder takes a while, depending on if we're on the grinder or not. Vehicles can take a long time, depending on how messed up they got. Just go be useful. In fact, when you're in phase, just never be the person that doesn't have a job. Go find a job. Be annoying about, like, finding a job. Like, never, ever, ever assume that it's okay to just totally relax unless your whole class is. Anyways, but as all the collaterals wrap up, everybody will check in with the LPO and say, hey, I just finished vehicles, all set, and they'll say check, and he'll write down the vehicles are done, okay, the grinder's done, okay, the bathrooms, the barracks, everything's done, okay, cool, everything's done. The LPO will say to the OIC, okay, everything's done. Everybody in the class will be told to muster again at this little space next to the barracks, kind of near where the pit is. And they'll talk about the next day. The OIC and the LPO will say, okay, guys, so today went well, today went bad, or whatever it is. They probably have some sort of reflection on the day. It wouldn't surprise me if they commented on, hey, guys, people are quitting now. Understand that we're in this thing and you got to stay focused and blah, blah, blah. But what they're going to say is, all right, so this is what the schedule looks like tomorrow. Whatever it is, they're going to give you the schedule, and everybody kind of gets the schedule. Sometimes they don't even give you the whole day. I remember my first phase OIC, who was awesome. He was like, look, I'm just going to tell you what the morning evolution is and what time to be there. I'll worry about the other stuff. We'll figure it out as we go. Because they don't want people to be like freaking out about how shitty the day looks. So it'll be like, okay, well, the day starts tomorrow at 5. All right. And so there's another set of collaterals that begins in the morning as well. So there's the evening collateral, which is kind of like winding down the day. And then there's the morning collateral, which is like the people who drew up the comics. Like, they literally need to go run over in the morning and put it in their office. The people that do coffee, some of the times, if it's not a programmed coffee machine, they have to go over and literally turn it on. There's the brass bell that's been cleaned. The junior men have to go over and literally go hang it up. There's like little things in the morning. There's also like after cleaning the barracks and everything, everybody slept in the barracks that night. And so the next day you got to clean your rooms, you got to clean the hallways, you got to get all the sand off. So there's all this stuff you got to do in the morning. And so if your day starts at 5, you're probably up between 3:30 and 4 doing your morning collaterals. And then you muster with your class, and then you head over to wherever it is you're supposed to meet the instructors. Let's assume the first thing you're doing is like a pre-breakfast run on the beach, like a conditioning run. Like you will go to the pit, which is behind the first phase barracks. You'll, put your blouse, your cami blouse, you'll fold it up and you'll put your, what else do you put? Maybe your canteen or something. Maybe it's just your blouse. You put your blouse in the pit. And you go out onto the beach and you have your white shirt that's stenciled, you have your cami pants, and you got your boots, and you unblouse your boots for runs. Normally your boots are bloused into your boots. You unblouse them, you bring your canteen with you, and you go wait on the beach. And if you're supposed to be there at 5, you better believe that the whole class is going to be there at like 4:30 or 4:45, just like freezing cold, like trying to stay warm and stretching, and everyone's just kind of like basically bullshitting, but the atmosphere is a little bit tense because the day is going to suck. And then there's this thing where in buds, and this goes all the way through third phase, whenever you arrive to a place where there are instructors, or when your instructors arrive to wherever you are and there are instructors, and if you're already at a place and new instructors show up, it is the responsibility of the class to recognize what instructors are present and shout them out or call them out. And it looks like this. Like, let's say I'm your instructor and you're waiting on the beach at 4:45, and then at 4:55, you see over on the first phase cadre side, they fire up their truck and you see them driving over. You literally have like watchers that are close to the gate where people are going to come in, and their job is to try to identify the instructors that are in the vehicle coming over. Because they don't tell you, hey, just, Instructor Allen's going to be there in the morning along with instructor blah, blah, blah. It's just kind of random because you have a bunch of instructors and the little watchers who are in your class, and it's their job to do this. They'll identify who's in the vehicle and they'll scream out to the LPO and OIC, hey, Instructor Allen's coming. And so as soon as I would drive through the gate onto the beach where you guys all are, the LPO and OIC would scream out, Instructor Allen! And then the whole class in unison yells, Hoo-yah, Instructor Allen! And then whoever else is there, let's say Instructor blah blah is there, Instructor blah blah, Hoo-yah, Instructor blah blah, until everyone's been called out, including the medic. If there's a diver, there's a whole thing. Every single time you have a new instructor show up, like in this case, you're waiting on the beach for them to show up, you have to do that with every single person. And if you don't, you get punished for it. So there's this goofy like call out thing. And then when you're in second phase, you'll be at the pool deck, and then instructors will filter onto the pool deck kind of one by one. You got to call them out as they show up. And then they, throughout the course of the day, maybe more instructors show up and like someone has to recognize it and call them out. Anyways, that's how it'll start. Someone will roll into the beach, and they'll probably just make you start running because you have this run in the morning that I was describing. And so you go, you do your run. Usually it's one of the faster instructors that leads the what do you call it, the conditioning runs. The day begins. And so you'll do your conditioning run, and then you go over to breakfast. And breakfast is this little shack. At least when I was in Buds, which was 2011 and 12, 2011 and the beginning of 12, we ate breakfast on the wet side. So that's the main side. In this it's called Gator Beach. It's a little ways down the beach towards the Hotel Del. So going north, there's this little like shack that's Navy owned, and inside is like a little, cafeteria for the Bud students. And then for lunch and for dinner, we would eat on the dry side over at the main cafeteria. But we eat our breakfast, and then, what I would do is I would try to eat food as fast as I possibly could, and then go outside and put in a dip with my swim buddy, and we would like try to savor like the couple minutes we had of just kind of peace, because you are totally left alone when you're eating. Granted, you don't get to eat for very long. I think it's like 30 minutes all in. Could be less if it's 20 minutes. And everybody has to get through the line, and it's a typical like high school cafeteria type of thing. And you got to eat, and the food's pretty good actually. I would say that's the one thing about Bud's food is it's actually quite good. but anyways, so then you eat, and then right after you eat, you have your next thing on the agenda, and your OIC will say, okay, guys, we got logs now, and you run, you go over, and you go to the O course, and you gear up for logs, and like with logs, you wear your blouse and you button up your shirt all the way to the top, and you have your hat that's connected by this red thread that's called shot line, and you pack your hat into your blouse pocket, and you gotta button it, and you gotta tuck in your blouse, and there's all these like weird protocols for each evolution, you have a slightly different outfit. It's wearing the same stuff, but like everybody has to wear it the same way. And so when they show up, your cadre, and you start calling them out like Instructor Allen, Instructor Allen, like everyone's ready, standing by next to their logs, which, oh, by the way, the logs are not put there for you. They are put behind I think they're either left near the O course or they're over near the pit. But like you literally have to, in preparation for your beat down with logs, you have to like go get the logs and like transport them over. And so if you have breakfast followed by logs, you're probably cutting breakfast short so you can go get the logs and go stage them over in front of the O course where you eating logs. And yeah, so just the I'm getting into like a weirdly specific daytime, but I mean, okay, so again, typical first phase day. You have your conditioning run in the morning, you got your breakfast that you rush through just either because you want to go put a dip in or because you have to go prep, for logs or even for boats. You have to stage boats as well. If it's O course right after breakfast, you're lucky because you get to go over and you don't need to prep anything. You just take off your blouse again and you just do the O course, and you do it in pairs. So let's just say you do logs, and I got into detail about logs. And it's usually a couple hours long of just crushing you with logs. And then like you'll go in, as soon as logs are done, they'll be like, all right, now go put the logs away and meet us back here, for a timed O course in 15 minutes. And it's the whole class. Like you're so happy when logs ends or when boats ends. And you run these stupid logs back and you put them down and you're like, fuck yeah, like I'm so glad that's done. And then like you go back and you like meet at the O course, and the way it works is, the fast people go first all the way down to the slowest people, and you go in pairs. And so I think a fast time during the whole O course is something like between 6 and 7 minutes. People do it faster than that. There are people that are amazing. I think that the fastest I ever did it was like maybe 7 minutes or something, which is really good. But that was well into it. But the O course is very technique driven. The O course is also one of the least stressful things that you need to do in BUD/S. It's a requirement that every week you pass a timed O course, and I forget what the actual times are for passing the O course in first phase, but it's definitely like structured. But when you're waiting to go, you literally get in a line and everyone's standing next to the person they're going to go with, and you go with someone based on their time. And the idea is you both run the O course at roughly the same time, and the O course is designed so it has 2 lanes. And you basically compete with the person you're going with, or if you're like basically everybody in BUD/S, you're told you're supposed to compete. The reality is you and your swim buddy, whoever it is for the O course, you're like, hey dude, I will go at your pace. Or, you know what I mean? Like you'll be like, hey, let's just go at the same pace, nice and easy, just get through this thing. Like you kind of almost work together, even though technically you're supposed to be competing. Some people compete. It makes maybe because the dynamic works for the two of them. I remember when I would do it, me and my swim buddy were like, cool dude, let's just go the same pace, super easy. Like it was the one chance we had to like slow down BUD/S a little bit. It was like we had a modicum of control over how things went. So you do the O course, and it usually takes about an hour or so to do the O course. One piece of advice I would have is that the most difficult things you do on the O course are the balance logs. Most people will figure it out pretty quick that the best way to do the balance logs is to go as fast as you can, like literally run down the log, because going slow and the log will roll. And you get 3 attempts at any obstacle. That, by the way, there's instructors watching you, and there's this thing called you have to be, I forget what it is, but you have to be honest. Like if you fall off an obstacle and no one sees it, and you don't basically hold yourself accountable, and someone catches you like basically being dishonest, and like, let's say no one was watching and you fell off the weaver 3 separate times. Now there's a very high chance that someone saw, an instructor, I mean, and they probably came over and they're like, all right, last attempt. Like, let's say you fail it twice. You have 3 attempts to pass an obstacle. And if you can't do it in 3 attempts, you fail that obstacle course. And if you fail an O course, if you fail an obstacle three times, you have now failed that day's O course. If you fail one O course, you have to pass the next one. I forget what the standards are, but basically, if you fail 2 O courses all in, you get rolled from the class. I think could be 3 total O courses, but it's pretty tight. But if you fail in a particular obstacle and you don't call it out, you don't let someone know, and they catch you, it's effectively cheating. So just know that when you're on the O course, even if you think you can get away with something, I mean, there is a time and a place, like in Hell Week, you can definitely get away with that kind of thing. But be very cautious about what you skip or what you kind of overlook, because if anybody catches you being dishonest in any capacity in buds, that is the fastest way to be removed from training. Like, dishonesty, i.e. integrity, is so central to like core values of buds that just you need to be hyper aware that there is a close eye on you, even if there isn't. But anyways, you go through the O course, and the 2 hardest parts to me anyways were the balance logs, which it's all about speed. You just go as fast as you can. And then the other one is actually the rope swing. And both these obstacles are not physically stressful at all. Like, there's no stress when you're in great shape as it is. Both of them require speed and commitment. If you're going to do the balance logs, it's run as fast as you can down the balance logs. And look where you're going, not where you are. People that fall off of them try to go super technical and like, that's just not how it's done. You got to go fast. Same goes for the rope swing. Like, people jump high and like kind of grab the rope and like they don't swing fast enough to get to the platform. You need to sprint, grab the rope and throw yourself forward and kind of let the rope lift you up a little bit to get on the platform. You will see people will actually fail buds for not being able to do the fucking rope swing, which is not physically demanding at all. It's all skill. But if you can't figure it out, and by the way, when you get to buds, when you get to Indoc, if you have the opportunity to go practice the O course, practice those 2 things. It's the balance logs and the rope swing. Everything else you can basically figure out. I mean, like, people fall off of stuff sometimes, but none of it's particularly hard. But those 2 are technique. So balance logs, go fast. Rope swing, go fast. And both are full commitment. But anyways, you do the O course, assuming you pass it all. And then afterwards, you got like, boat PT, and you go down on the beach and you stage your boats. Everybody stages them like 4x4. Like the boats themselves are kind of ordered from highest number to smallest number. And once again, when you got to be there. And so whatever you're doing, you're like rushing to like get over the next thing. And, maybe it's a new set of cadre coming out to do the boat PT with you. And so you have your little runners that are like literally standing by waiting for the vehicle to show up on the beach. And they're identifying who's showing up. Oh, it's Instructor Allen again. Instructor Allen. And then everyone yells, "Booyah, Instructor Allen." And then we get on the beach, and you do boat PT. And boat PT, I thought, was not as bad as log PT, but there are people that would say the reverse. The worst part about, I think, boat PT, besides frankly just the amount of just weight driving into your spine, which sucks, is when you got to do literally sprints. I gave that weird analogy about running around the block with a bag of water on your head. The reality is the type of running that you do with the boat on your head is literally sprints. They will set up a mark on the beach, on the hard packed, so the hard packed portion of the sand, where like one vehicle is, 100 yards away from another vehicle. And they're like, all right, sprint. And so they literally will have, they're called drag races. They will have 2 different boats, so 2 different boat crews starting at the same point, and the boat is literally on all 6 of their heads, each boat crew, so 12 total people. And there'll be an instructor who's like standing between them like it's a drag race, right? And it's on your mark, get set, go. And sometimes the way they finish boat PT is that, let's say there's like 20 boat crews. So there's 20 boats. And the way you get off the beach to finish boat PT, which, by the way, all the time in buds, there are incentives to do better. because usually the incentive is like, if you, finish your O course in this amount of time or less, you get to go leave early. Or if you run, your timed run at this speed or less, you get to leave early, or you get to lay down, or you get to like close your eyes for a few minutes. Boat PT is totally like, expect there to be pays to be a winner type of exercise, where it'll be like, you'll do drag races, and the only way to leave the beach is if you win one of the drag races. So you can imagine that if you keep losing drag races, you're just going to get more tired, and the people that you're competing against are probably fresh because you keep getting recycled and have to go up against a new boat crew. And then the worst part is that you're the last, couple boat crews to leave the beach. You don't get to leave the beach. They beat you down. Like, everybody else has managed to win their respective drag race and gets to go run up to the pit, which is behind first phase, and like the one kind of safe space in Buds for students. And everyone's like counting their lucky stars that they're not stuck on the beach. Because, by the way, that's totally how it is. It's not like, oh my God, I feel so bad for those guys. It's more like, thank fucking God we got off the beach. And guys will go in the pit, they'll put a dip in, they stash Snickers bars and power bars, and basically it's a chance to just like literally relax for a few minutes while the rest of the class is getting fucked up on the beach. And that's just kind of true. That's the goon squad, if you will. At the end of basically every evolution, if there's an opportunity to drive competition, and there will be all the time, it'll be like, if your boat crew can do XYZ, you get this prize. If you can't, not only do you not get the prize, but you get punished extra. And believe it or not, the exercise is not in identifying who's in the best shape, who's the fastest boat crew, who's this, who's that. It's who's like able to keep doing this. If you consistently are the boat crew that keeps losing, but you're like hard as nails, and you like keep getting fucked up on the beach, but no one's complaining, and everyone's just like putting out, and it just so happens that you're a slow boat crew, like, the instructors are looking for that kind of grit and determination. So don't take it as like, if you lose and you're stuck on the beach, which, by the way, basically everybody at some point, their boat crew gets gooned, and you're like stuck doing some bullshit at the end of an evolution. It's not a reflection of you or your boat crew yet. However, if you consistently get gooned and people in your boat crew are just complaining and no one's trying that hard, and it's just like everyone's feeling bad about it and feeling bad for themselves, that's when you get lots of negative attention. So obviously, if you win your drag race, or you win and get whatever time you're supposed to get in whatever evolution you're doing, that's best case scenario. But no, there's opportunities to actually excel if you and your boat crew get gooned. You need to be able to demonstrate that you can take a punishment like a fucking man. So like, if your boat crew is the last on the beach and you know you're going to get beat down, you're like, fuck, tonight we have, night rock portage or something, and you're already like, God, I wish I could have a couple minutes to relax. Get that shit out of your mind and just focus on the fact that you have an opportunity to, even if it's just in the eyes of your peers that are under the boat with you or under the log with you or whatever it is you got to do, you have an opportunity to demonstrate that you're serious, that you're going to graduate this course just by not complaining and putting out. That's the phrasing, is put out. You got to put out, and if the instructors sense that you're not trying hard enough, they will zero in on you, and it will not be okay for you. So that's like a boat PT in the afternoon. And then, so the other kind of evolutions that could be thrown in for on another day, instead of a conditioning run, is you might do like an early morning time swim. You might do, let's see what else. There's also like paddles, like you go out in the ocean and you literally paddle around and do like dump boat exercises where you're like flipping the boat over and then flipping it back. But you do it all out in the ocean. Certainly there's surf torture, which is, I don't know if it ever actually gets scheduled on the agenda, but it's so often used as a punishment. One thing I would say about surf torture, which is, it's not really as bad as it looks. And after you're done with Buds and you look back, because you're so cold all the time, that's another element of Buds, is you're just wet constantly and the wind's kind of cutting through your clothes. Surf torture is just, it's not this thing that stands out as like the thing. It's just one of the many ways in which you were cold. And you'll find a rhythm of how you handle it. The stuff that here's some tips about surf torture. So first of all, you lay in the water. Usually it's facing towards the shore. So like your feet are closest to the sand, your head is closest to the deepest part of the ocean. And you lock arms with the people near you, and you just lay there. And you lay in the portion of the surf where when the tide is receded for a second, you're basically on sand, and then the waves will come in and it'll cover your head and everything, and it'll soak you for a minute. And then when it recedes again, it drags obviously water, but sand that's been churned up into your nose and your eyes and everything, but you can't touch your face really because your arms are locked. You kind of can, and you can kind of reach down and use your hands a little bit. But basically, you just got to accept that water is going to go up into your nose and it's going to go in your ears. But the pro tip is you want to get water in your ears as soon as you can. I know it sounds like a weird thing to say, but when you put your head back in the water, you don't want like an air pocket to be in your ear. You want kind of full immersion as fast as you can, because it's this horrible feeling when you're laying in the water and you're freezing, and all of a sudden that little weird little pocket of air where no water has actually touched the inner part of your ear yet. I'm not talking about inside your ear. I'm talking about like the parts of your ear that you can see. When you first get in, sometimes there's a little pocket of air that sits on your ear. You want that to like break. You want water to touch your ear, both of your ears. Because when you're really cold and you're laying there and it's miserable, and then all of a sudden, like maybe 30 seconds or a minute into laying in the water, finally water touches the inner parts of your ear. Again, not your literal inner ear, but the outside of your ear that you can see, like just inside your ear. It's like super uncomfortable because you're already freezing, and that water that touches the part of your ear, and you go from being able to hear to kind of like not being able to hear. You just want to have that, you want to knock that out right away. So get in the water, like shake your head or something, get all the water all over your head, be completely saturated as fast as you can so that there's no more like suddenly you got a little colder or it was a little more uncomfortable. Hope that makes sense. It's a little bit weird. But surf torture, to be honest, like it takes a long time, but really it doesn't. In the grand scheme of things, you don't actually have to do anything, and it actually might even be good for you because you have swollen muscles and joints and you're in pain, and that might hurt like hell, but you're basically taking an ice bath over and over and over again. And you never stay in for much more than like 5 or 10 or 15 minutes at a clip. And a lot of times when you're laying in the water, that's when your instructors take the opportunity to really screw with your head. Like your lead instructor will come out with the bullhorn and talk about how fucked up the class is. I've never seen a class this bad. You guys are all over the place. What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, I thought there were supposed to be good candidates. Like, none of you were going to make it. And it's funny, you sitting here now listening to this, you're like, yeah, I get it. It's a bunch of bullshit. But when you're laying in freezing cold water, and you're miserable, that stuff actually has an effect on you. So just know that when you're doing surf torture, it's a big mental exercise because you just need to lay there and take it. And a lot of people can't handle it, and it's just too much strain, but it's not that bad. Some people say that the surf torture is really bad, the guys especially that have very, very low body fat. I was lean, but more like normal person lean, not like 0% body fat. I was just a typical, like, thin, fit, but not 0% body fat. And maybe that was useful because the guys that I knew that were like shredded, being in the water was really hard for them. So maybe that'll be you. But either way, it's brief. It's not that long. And that kind of fits the gaps in between deliberate evolutions. You have like your timed runs and your O courses and boats and logs, and you have all the stuff you do that's scheduled literally on the agenda. And then you have like surf torture, which just kind of happens, and it happens a lot. So don't dread it. It's actually really not that bad. And honestly, the first time that you're told to be surf tortured, it's kind of exhilarating because it's so iconic. When you think about buds, you think about people like laying in the ocean. It's kind of cool to do it the first few times, and then quickly that's gone. And then the other one that I've just totally omitted is grinder PT. So you'll have an instructor that will literally do the exercises with you, but it's not like a typical workout. You all run out on the grinder, and when you first go out, like they'll tell you to be there at like, let's say 3:00. Unlike other evolutions where you're there ahead of the instructors, in this case, you have to show up at a certain time. And you'll know this is not on you. It's going to be your OIC and LPO. But you set up your get up for PT, which is like, tucked in shirt and all that. And when it's time, you need to run onto the grinder in formation, carrying your canteen, and your instructors are already out there on the grinder, up on the platform, like ready for you, and they're in PT gear. And as you run in, you yell "Hoo-yah" really loud for a really long amount of time. If you Google like class 234 breakout, you'll hear people yelling like "Hoo-yah!" And there's like a chant you do before you go onto the grinder. Anyways, it's all kind of like historic. But anyways, you do this chant, you run on the grinder, and everybody takes up positions on the duck feet. You literally, as soon as you're on the grinder, people just run and they fill in as everywhere they can on the Bud's feet, the flippers that are painted in the ground. And then you get your ass kicked, and you'll get like, I forget what the name is for it, but like you'll have blisters on like the lower part of your back because your shirt will ride up and you're doing sit-ups on concrete. And obviously there's no pad or anything, so it like grinds the shit out of your back. You'll have calluses all over the insides of the palms of your hands from doing push-ups on the hot cement. Man, it's pretty brutal, but I don't think I've really met anybody that has said grinder PT really comes close to being as difficult as like poster logs, which I don't know if that makes you feel better or worse. But grinder PT was never really anything that people dreaded because the instructors did the exercises with you, which is a small thing, but it forced the whole evolution to be doable. It might be miserable, but it's not like physically impossible because your instructor is at the front, literally doing every rep with you. I would say though that throughout grinder PT, you are constantly told as a class to go get wet and sandy. So like you'll be doing your push-ups and like go, you have 2 minutes to get wet and sandy. And like literally your whole class sprints off the grinder, sprints to the break in the berms, jumps in the ocean. And the way you get wet is you run into like your ankles, you turn around. This is how you do it. There's actually a way to do it. You run in, you turn around so your back is to the ocean, and you let yourself fall backwards and you completely immerse yourself. Like your head goes underwater, face underwater. If you have a cover, your hat, you got to make sure that gets wet too. Your entire being has to be soaked. And then you get out, you run to the beach, and you roll around on the beach, and you have to cover everything from your armpits to your neck to the backs of your knees. You need to be head to toe covered in sand. You can't miss a spot because if you miss a spot and your instructor see you, the whole class has to redo it. Means go all the way back out, again, go back in the ocean, turn around, fall backwards, completely soaked, run back on the beach, get completely covered in sand, you go back. And you got to sprint and you got to get to the grinder within usually 2 minutes, and nobody makes it in 2 minutes. So, like, even if you did, they'd tell you didn't. And by the way, you don't get to wear a watch in buds, so you have no sense of how fast things are going. You just got to do it again. And sometimes you do it a bunch of times. Then finally they're like, okay, you guys suck. You're never going to make the time. So we're going to start doing like, 8 counts. But anyway, so the grinder PT, it's not just doing exercises. It's like getting wet and sandy and intermittent throughout. And so now imagine if your whole class of about 100 people is, doing grinder PT where you're getting soaking wet and getting sandy. Imagine all the sand that gets tracked onto the grinder. At the end of the day, you guys got to clean that stuff up. So grinder PT, that's one of the things you do. And really, I mean, that's first phase. I mean, the only other thing that stands out, besides Hell Week is like you do land portage, which is really boat PT, and surf portage. What's it called? Either way, there's surf. When you take your boat on the land and you run around with it and carry it and you're on the land, that's called land portage. And that's actually what they call it. So they don't call it boat PT. Or if they do, it's not really what it is. It's called land portage. And there's log PT and land portage. And so land portage is like running with the boat and doing exercises with the boat. But you also take your boat out past the surf and paddle around and do like boat races and stuff. The thing that is sketchy about the taking your boat out into the water is usually the whole boat crew is totally spent. Even early on, you're super tired, and you need to take this big, like, stupid looking boat and like get it out past the breakers. You need to, and sometimes the surf is pretty bad, and the boat will get flipped, and people get like stuck under the boat, and it's sketchy. But you'll get the rhythm after doing it a few times with your boat crew. Really, it just comes down to like charging and paddling hard as fuck to get the boat out past the breakers. But getting out past the surf is a challenge for some people, both when you get your boat out there and then also whenever you do the 2 mile ocean swims, there'll be a buoy that's like, 100 yards into the water where all your instructors are waiting, and you got to swim out, like directly out through the breakers to get to the buoy. And it's not part of the evolution, like it's just getting to the starting point, but you got to put out quite a bit just to get past the breakers. And then you all huddle up at the buoy and then you do your swim. But anyways, getting out past the breakers can be a challenge. But the first couple times you do it with your boat crew, it's way harder than it is after a couple times doing it, because you develop a rhythm and a cadence and you guys figure it out. The other thing you do with your boats in terms of being out on the water is you do rock portage, which down near the Hotel Del there is this jagged rock outcropping, and you literally like ride waves in one by one and try to land on this jagged rock outcropping. And it's fucking really dangerous, and it's a rite of passage in buds. You only do it like once during the day, and then you do it at night. And the night one is where that one sucks, but you get through it. Really, it's just like, it's more like a mental thing. Like you're riding this boat when you're all ragged and you've been fucked up like every day since you started buds, and you got to literally land on like jagged rocks. And half the time your boat like flips on the rocks. You're getting like pummeled with waves, and guys are getting trapped under the boat. It's just a fucking mess. In first phase, there's a number of test gates. In addition to passing a 4-mile timed run every week, and I forget what the time is, so I'm not even going to make a time up, but you can definitely Google this. In addition to that, you need to pass an O course every week, and you need to pass a timed swim, which is a 2-mile ocean swim. In addition to those 3 things, which you must do every week. And I think that's actually true throughout the entirety of buds. The times get progressively harder, but every week you need to pass each of those things. You have these very specific test gates in first phase. The first one you do is the 50-meter underwater swim, which for us was on day 2 of first phase, where you jump in the pool, you flip underwater. So you submerge. While submerged, you do a flip, and then without kicking off the wall, you begin swimming to the other side of the pool. And you do the whole length. You touch that wall, turn around. You can kick off that wall, and you swim back. And you all the way back when you surface. So it's 50 meters all done underwater. I've talked about the 50 meter on an IGTV video. I've talked about it in previous tactical tips that we were doing early on. That's on Patreon. The 50 meter is really, really intimidating before you do it. But for reference, I had never completed more than 35 meters underwater until test day in first phase. There's something to be said for being told to do something. Like, it's mandatory. Get in the fucking pool and swim 50 meters. You have a different mindset than when you're at home thinking about the 50 meter and then like challenging yourself to go try it, which, by the way, don't even consider it unless you have someone spotting you, because passing out is very real. And if you don't have someone spotting you trying a 50 meter, you'll just drown. And it happens to people. So anytime you're doing any sort of breath holding thing, which frankly I wouldn't even advise doing, but if you are, don't be a dummy and do it with someone else. But anyways, it's hard because it feels optional when you're home. When you're at the buds compound and you're told to do it, now you're in buds, it is a different attitude. You're ready to kind of throw yourself into the fact that you're in buds, you want to pass, it's early in training, and you just get in there and you do it. And really, if you go to the bottom of the pool, and I think they tell you this, but if they don't tell you this, go to the bottom of the pool. You do it in the 9-foot section, I believe. So you should be literally at 9 feet, like your belly rubbing against the ground. And it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And so when you're doing that first leg, don't rush it. Just keep yourself composed. Nice, strong, steady strokes. Good, like just solid form all the way to the other side. Turn around. Don't start freaking out. Do a huge kick off that wall and streamline as far as you possibly can. And then begin your final pulse. Once you get about halfway or 3/4 back, that's when you can kick in hyperdrive and you can go as fast as you can. And the instructors that are literally, one's going to be over you with a snorkel. There'll be a guy like next to you in the water. As soon as you're like within striking distance of finishing, they'll like grab you and almost push you to the wall, because shallow water blackouts happen pretty commonly. on the back end of the 50 meter. Guys just pass out like on the way up. It's not scary. It sounds scary. It's not. It's a reality of holding your breath and exerting yourself underwater. And so the instructors are there to catch you and make sure you don't drown. That's another thing, is remember, there are people that are looking out for you the whole time. So put your lives in their hands, because they're really good at what they do. But there's two reactions to being hypoxic. Hypoxic is when you don't have air, when you don't have oxygen. There's euphoria, and this is not just at the 50 meter, but anytime you're underwater without air, there's basically two reactions to it. I think it is like genetic, but I don't know. Maybe you can do research and find out. But it's euphoria, when you feel like everything feels great, and there's panic. I trended towards panic, but on the 50 meter, I felt euphoric on the return trip, and it was very easy to complete the last leg of the trip, but I only felt it about a quarter of the way back on the return trip. I knew I was going to pass it at the quarter mark. And you'll find, and just so you know, I've spoke to a number of people that have gone to BUD/S relatively recently, that have been successful at the 50 meter, and it's really not as bad as it's made out to be. So the 50 meter, honestly, just doing it is what you need to do. I wouldn't freak out about it. It's not nearly as bad as it seems, and most people pass it. Like, the overwhelming majority of people pass it, including plenty of people that are very nervous about it. So that's like the early test gate, and then later there is the series of test gates that you need to pass in order to go to Hell Week, and it's kind of like how you punch your ticket to Hell Week, and that is underwater knot tying, drown proofing, and what's the other one? I think that might be it. Yeah, I think that's it. If I think of it, I'll tell you. So underwater knot tying is you just, one at a time, you swim down to the deepest part of the pool, and there's a line that's been tethered with weights at the bottom of the pool, and you go down and you tie your knots. You can do one at a time, or you can tie multiple knots at a time. The thing about knot tying that makes it hard is that you need to get to the bottom of the pool before you can start tying knots, which sounds silly, but if you were right now to hold your breath, just start holding your breath, and you started tying knots, you'd have literally no issues tying the knots. The knots are not complicated. It's like the clove hitch, the square knot, the waterman's knot, then there's two others that now I'm forgetting. A lot of people will do like 3 knots the first go down, and then they'll do like 2 knots the second time. Or some guys have even done 5 at once. But an instructor has to go down with you and like check the knot and make sure it's good and everything. But when you're on the surface, holding your breath and tying knots is not hard. Even if you wait until you're like chicken necking, on land, like you really need air, and you still tie knots, it's not that stressful. But underwater, just going down, knowing that now you're testing and someone's about to judge your knots, you have to swim down, which takes a level of effort to get down to the bottom. And then you need to like kind of let yourself almost settle onto the bottom of the pool. So your gut's on the bottom of the pool. So your like hands are in front of you and you can actually manipulate the rope. And so it takes time and energy to get down there. And so by the time you're even tying a knot, there's a chance that you will have begun to panic a little bit, that you expended more energy than you had anticipated. You're being judged. The instructor's literally right in front of you, staring at you, watching you do it, wanting you to fuck up, to be perfectly honest. And it can be more difficult than you realize. The trick to doing knot tying is there's 2 phases to the test. There's more than that, but make it really simple. There's the get to the bottom of the pool phase, which is don't worry about knots. When you start, you signal by pointing your thumb down when you're in the pool and you're looking at your instructor. You signal your thumb down and they tell you, okay, they give you the okay symbol. You swim down. Step 1 is get to the bottom of the pool. Don't worry about anything else. Swim to the bottom, get settled, let yourself settle. Once you're down there and you're in front of the rope and you've got your little rope that you're going to tie onto it, phase 2 starts, which is tie your knots. You can tie 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But you need to tell the instructor before you go down what knots you're going to tie. So you can't just go down there and see what happens. You need to say, I'm going to tie, Instructor Blah, Instructor Allen, I'm going to tie the square knot and the clove hitch. And then they'll say, got it. go tie the square knot in the clove hitch, and we go down. I don't know if this is true because I kind of forget, but I think that if you go down and you say you're going to tie these 2 knots and you only tie one of them because you can't get the second one, I believe that's like a hit, and you're given a second opportunity to go down and tie it. But if you can't do it on the second time, you fail the test. So if you're really unsure, just do one at a time. Although it is kind of a lot to like go to the surface, go down again, tie it, come back up, go down again. Most people do it in 2 bursts, sometimes 3. But you just need to relax, segment the test into 2 parts. There's the journey down, then there's the knot tying. Don't be worrying about the knot tying on the journey down. Just get to the bottom. So there's knot tying and then drown proofing. Drown proofing is that series of bobbing with your hands tied behind your back, the travel where you kind of swim with your hands and feet tied, and then there's the mask retrieval that you do as well. You practice drown proofing a lot in buds. During those first 3 weeks, you'll run over to the pool and literally be given an opportunity to do drown proofing. It's stressful because there's instructors and stuff, but you're given a lot of time. Drown proofing, you should literally enjoy the bobbing portion. That's how comfortable you should be. You should be relaxed and you should enjoy the up and the down, and it's relaxing. Like, if you can relax and actually literally enjoy it, you will pass drown proofing. And most people that pass drown proofing say the same thing, that they literally kind of enjoyed the kind of slow, methodical, no one's screwing with you. You have plenty of time, plenty of air. But you get lots of opportunity. And I actually was really bad at drown proofing when we were in Buds Prep, and I got really good at it in first phase before test day. Anyway, so you have all your timed evolutions, run, swim, O courses. You got to pass each week for those 3 weeks, and you have that 50 meter on like the second day, and you have knot tying and drown proofing. And once you pass all of those things on like the final day, I think you do like knot tying and drown proofing on like the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of the 3rd week. Once you do that, you punched your ticket to Hell Week, which is the following week, the 4th week. And so without getting into Hell Week, because this went on way longer than I meant for it to, I'm going to stop here. Next week, we'll pick up with how it feels, because I mentioned that there's a big mental shift from from where you are now, which is in theory you are all waiting to join the Navy, to the person you are when you are about to start Buzz, to the person you are right before Hell Week. Basically, the preview is when you get to Hell Week, it's not something you're excited about or dreading. You're more happy that you have the opportunity to check one of the biggest boxes in Buds. You're not saying like, oh great, I'm going to be a SEAL if I get through it. You're saying, if I can just pass Hell Week, now if I get rolled down the line, I don't need to do first phase over again. Because if you get rolled post Hell Week, you start again with the next class post Hell Week. So it's a big, big, big milestone. People are not sitting around saying, if I just pass this, I'm going to be a SEAL. They're sitting around saying, oh my God, I need to get through this because I can't do the 3 weeks of first phase and another Hell Week all over again. So that's really the mindset you get into. It's like resentment, it's like cynicism, but it's definitely not fear, it's not dread, it's just you're ready to just get it done and check that box. More to follow next week. Let me know what you guys think of this episode. I feel like it was less structured than the last one, but it's because it's kind of hard to detail so much that goes on in those first 3 weeks. But to reiterate, I mean, it's shock and awe, it's pain and agony, but it's doable. And the people that are there to graduate will quickly realize that there are other people in the class that are there to graduate with them, and you'll stay close to those people. You'll struggle together. You'll make dark jokes together. You'll get through this really shitty thing together. And then coming into Hell Week, you should have a relatively strong class. And you should definitely have some people in your corner at that point that are kind of your go-to people that kind of like help you and you help them kind of pick each other up throughout the day. So I hope this was useful. Looking forward to talking about Hell Week next week. And so, yeah, that's it, guys. I hope you enjoy. Take care.